Welcome to episode 58 of the Sports Geek podcast. NFL season is almost upon us, and we catch up with the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks and talk to Kenton Olson about Super Bowl week and the season ahead and AFL media rights. Is it time to Google it?
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for the sports digital marketer. And now, here's your host, who just reset the Twitter password for your favorite athlete, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Passwords. It is something that I regularly do when starting out with a team or an athlete, is to get them to change their password. It might be an easy to remember password. It might be easy to type, but it may not. It definitely will not be the most secure passwords. So if you're a team that has a password that includes the mascot name, potentially maybe the year your team was formed, I highly suggest you go and change those passwords to a stronger password, 15 characters, multiple variations, not easy to read. It may be an inconvenience when you have to sign into a Twitter account, which we do once a year, if that. Really important to have those passwords strong. The last thing you want to do is have your account hacked on any platform. And that also goes for Facebook. So your personal Facebook account has to have a strong password, because that is the way that potential hackers will try to get access to your page. So there you go. I'm going to get off my soapbox. On today's show, I catch up with a former guest. We caught up with him in the playoffs last year, Kenton Olson from the Seattle Seahawks. So we're going to have a chat about what it was like going through the Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks and what he learned from it. And then later in my chat with Francis Leach on ABC Grandstand, we talk about AFL media rights and how Google is becoming a player in the sports media landscape and potentially might be a bidder for future league rights, not only in Australia, but around the world. But first, here's my chat with Kenton Olson from the Seattle Seahawks. Very happy to welcome a previous guest who was on the podcast, who joined me during the NFL playoffs last year, and I'm going to catch up with him before the NFL season. Kenton Olson from the Seattle Seahawks. Welcome to the podcast.
Sean, good to be with you again.
And like last time we caught up with you, it was just you're in the midst of the NFL playoffs. I think it was a couple of days before the NFC Championship game. You had a couple of big weeks after that. Do you want to sort of take us through the whole Super Bowl experience in running an NFL digital team through that Super Bowl experience?
Yeah, I can certainly do my best. It was obviously, to say the least, it was definitely a blur. I mean, it seemed like it went so quick, even though it was over 3 weeks there if you include the NFC Championship game. But yeah, I know we pretty much were social media 24/7. As soon as that final whistle blew at the NFC Championship game through the really the parade. I think it was the second or third week in February. We had our entire staff travel out to New York with the team, and we were fully plugged in. I think a very big piece that we spent a lot of our effort focusing on during the Super Bowl run was really the interaction and responses to fans. I've always noticed that a lot of sports teams, us in the past for sure, are always very good about talking about ourselves, but it is social media, so it is really important that you actually engage with our community. So we had multiple people on around the clock, 24 hours a day, just interacting with our fans, and we feel like we did a really, really good job with that.
And so, it was a real. I mean, it's when you're in that type of period, and we've been through sort of finals periods with teams. It's really tough because it's not only the national attention of the media that is on the Super Bowl, but it's it's international, and so you've got a really unique point of view because you have the access to the teams, and the fans just want to feel a part of it. So do you think that whole doing the social connection, but then producing so much more content, really, got your fans, as much as they're going to be in, they're going to be. We talked about them being tapped in, but do you think that really sort of locked them in and still made this, Seahawks.com a destination for all your fans?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a couple of things, we focused on. I think one, we were literally on the opposite side of the country. I mean, Seattle and New York, you can't get much further away from Seattle than New York. I suppose if you went down to Florida, maybe. So for us, it was really important to, connect with all of our Seahawks fans back here home, but then also around the world. So, we did a lot of behind the scenes access with photos from, practices, interviews with guys all throughout the media days. Basically, everything we saw, we tried to convey that message and get it back to our folks here in Seattle. A second piece of our overall content strategy was the fact that, there were, the Super Bowl is one that, if you were a Broncos fan or you're a Seahawks fan, you certainly had, rooting interest, but a lot of other people necessarily didn't. So for us, we had to balance between, doing tons of exclusive new content, but as well as, informing fans of, maybe our more casual fans or fans that were new to the Seahawks more about maybe some different storylines that they're seeing a lot that we don't know much about. So, why does Marshawn Lynch like Skittles? What's the story behind the number 12? What's all this different kind of stories that are going on, and kind of, update fans on those. I think some of our most popular content actually, at least most traffic content in terms of page views, was actually, just kind of informing those new fans about some of that content maybe they've missed.
And that's really important. That's one of the things from my talk that I did at SEAT. It's very easy to you've got the 12s, this super passionate fan base that love everything about the Seahawks, and they'll like and share, and they take part in things like your Hawk architecture thing where they're all kitting out their house. But when you do have big events like Super Bowl, you do get those bandwagon fans or those casual fans, and you've still got to produce content for them. So that kind of stuff, you've got to make sure that you're not just producing content for those super avid fans, because they'll like it and share it and all that kind of thing, because you've got this opportunity to reach completely new fans and start them on the journey to becoming more fully fledged Seahawks fans.
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's we're lucky that we had a lot of eyeballs on us, and certainly grew a lot in our social media following. And for us, always the audience we have on social media is a great number. It's great to say we're now over 4 million kind of user reach in social media. But, for us now, and for us during the playoffs, which is kind of really we started focusing on, we looked at every post, and we kind of looked at what content was most engaging. So we kind of created an engagement metric around every single individual post we did, and that was really helpful to kind of figure out this content is working, this content's not. Let's dial it down here, tune it up there, and it kind of really helped us really engage with our fans and kind of really figure out what works.
And it's really important, that you're doing. So effectively, you built your own edge rank to a certain degree to say, this is what we want out of this style post, and this is what the fans like. So you had your own formula of success rather than being a slave to, what Facebook says is right or what Twitter says is right. You pretty much came up with effectively your own homegrown formula to say, well, we put out this picture and the fans liked it, or we put out this style of post and the fans liked it. Was that sort of what you sort of worked throughout the playoffs?
Yeah, mostly. We work really closely with a company here in Seattle called Simply Measured, and they have a great product, and we kind of worked with them and used some of their tools. But the way we define engagement, obviously it's different for every platform, because how you engage in every platform is slightly different. So on Twitter, that's a reply, a retweet, or a favorite. On Facebook, that's a comment, a share, or a like. On Instagram, that's a like your photo or a comment, and then Google Plus, that's a different set of metrics altogether. And it was really interesting just to see. One reason we really like that number is it, especially with Facebook's algorithm, you're not guaranteeing your entire audience is seeing your content. It really kind of helps validate what platforms are actually the most engaging and people are seeing our most content. So, it's interesting. I can't remember exactly what our numbers were during the Super Bowl run, but I do remember our engagement numbers. At the time we had well over 1 million followers on Facebook, and we had just under 500,000 followers on Instagram. So notionally, you'd think, oh, you're going to get a lot more engagements on Facebook. When in reality, for us, the average Instagram post, during the time leading up to the Super Bowl had 39,700 engagements. versus the average post on Facebook, even though we had more followers, had 26,600 engagement. So it was really interesting for us just to see that in some ways we're actually people are engaging and seeing our content more on Instagram than maybe they are on Facebook or Twitter, for that matter.
Well, that you've already answered a question I was going to ask. Was there a platform or a particular piece of content that popped? And you've obviously said that in your answer that Instagram was one, because it's built for engagement, because it doesn't have any other focus. It's not like you can say click this link and go back to our site. The only it's a one action for the fan. They just have to double tap, and if you're putting out content that's right at the right time, that's all they have to do. So there's so many fans that just want to be part of it, and that's the way that they can go about doing it.
Yeah, I think, another, certainly the platform was interesting, but I think just the media we posted across the platforms was also really, really interesting for us. So, that was really important for us that we were looking at everything, what content is, the most engaging. And, a lot of people, will say video is, in some ways the most engaging, but, for us during the Super Bowl, run, photos were much more engaging. It had a much higher engagement metric than video content did, and then, obviously more than written content. So, for us, we just saw the importance of photos. And so, in the past, we may had, posted out posts on Twitter that didn't have any media attached, and just based on the metrics, we just kind of shifted. Now, for the most part, everything we post has, a piece of media attached, and that's, really helps grow our engagement on Twitter, and just helps kind of guide, what type of content we want to invest our resources in.
One thing I did want to ask, post Super Bowl, like the way that the media cycle works these days, it is a 3-week lead up almost to the Super Bowl, and it's covered, ad nauseum almost. But once the result happens, media tends to move on. Whereas the team itself has, the fans still want to revel and celebrate. And you had things like, the parade. What was it like post Super Bowl for your team as far as, trying to figure out the right amount of content to put out, and what to cover, and how much the fans just kept coming and wanted to sort of still revel in the win?
Yeah, I think for us, we did. We all are competitors on the field, in the digital space, across leagues or even within our league, we're all resources for each other. And so I certainly, reached out to other teams that had recently won championships and just kind of talked to them about their experience. And, one thing they all said is just that, after you win, just everything explodes. So just trying to keep up on everything, and maybe in the past you can kind of see what social media memes or what content is kind of traveling the fastest online. Well, in reality, everything is just traveling such at a high velocity. And so for us, we basically had our content plan in place for if we win, here are the 4 or 5 things that we're going to focus all of our time and effort on, and we really focused on that, opposed to trying to kind of let the chatter dictate where we went. We just focused on a couple things. We did still have obviously folks on our team, and we brought in some folks to assist us, help focus on just responding to fans, just engaging and kind of building morale in the community. But for us, we really focused on 4 or 5 things that were just really important post game, at least on the game day itself, and then we obviously built that up as we went throughout the parade. And I think kind of obviously what are those 4 or 5 pieces? Well, those 4 or 5 pieces, we tried to bank on what are things that no one else can get. And so, for us, granted there were a lot of people in the locker room, but, we had a lot of great shots and a lot of great photos and video from, guys celebrating in the locker room or walking off the field, from the post-game parties, all kinds of different stuff that, really in general the media doesn't have. So we had a lot of success on focusing on those.
Yeah, I was talking to Rich Clark from Arsenal at Seat in Miami, and he was talking about the same stuff with their FA Cup win. That some of the content that they produced in the celebration afterwards, and basking in the glory of the win, was just as good as the lead up and the win itself, because they were the only ones covering that side of the story. And the fans the fans had an insatiable appetite that, they didn't want the football season to end. It's the best season ever. You've gone and won the Super Bowl. You want to continue and revel in that. So just like the
I think one thing I'll point out, just to kind of say that, I don't remember the engagement metrics, but it was surprising some of the things that had the most engagement. If you've ever been, here to our facility here in Renton outside of Seattle, we have Seahawks Way is the street we're on, and we have a sign that, says "Welcome to the Seahawks Complex." Our facilities guy who's back here had a guy that basically was ready to install Super Bowl champion, basically kind of plaque on that. And so he sent us that photo as soon as he had put it up. And that was, a piece of content that was just shot to camera phone by, a person who was installing a sign. And just people in Seattle just loved, kind of seeing that first official piece of the championship back here in Seattle. So there's interesting things like that, you don't expect to be huge that, end up, people get really excited about.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It gives your fans the opportunity to show their pride and brag about the win. And it is those small things. For as much as we're always trying to be the first with the news, sometimes those type of little local angles or small little pieces are just what the fans want to want to share.
Yeah, and I think specifically with social media, I think there's certainly always the tendency that you have to be a breaking news outlet, and I think in a lot of cases, yes, you certainly do. But in some cases, you're not going to be the first one of the stories. So a lot of times it's, what kind of spin or uniqueness can you add to the story? And so that's, what we really focused on, especially, not Super Bowl related, but, throughout the course of the, the regular season, we're not going to be the first ones necessarily to report transactions, but, we can be certainly the authority to have the official news and maybe get some access that no one else can get ahead of time.
So much like, the players on the field, you're coming back as returning champs. So from a digital team point of view, you've got bigger expectation, you've got a bigger audience. You said there before, you had 1 million Facebook, and now you're at just about 2.5, or just over 2.5. Sorry, 2.5 million. So what type of goals do you have coming into this season from a digital team's point of view? Is there any particular content or platforms you've got some goals around?
Yeah, I think one adage too, just to kind of say our audience has grown. It took us 5 years to get to 1 million fans. It took us 5 months to get to 2 million. So that kind of just shows you the hockey stick. But so for us, I think we're really taking a lot of learnings we had during the Super Bowl in terms of focusing on engagement numbers, focusing on interacting and responding with our fans is obviously huge. But outside of that, really a piece that we're really focused on is just being a mobile first organization, across the board. We're certainly working on kind of a new platform for a website that we're hoping to launch at some point this season. Some really great improvements to our mobile application that'll be coming this season, because we're finding a lot of fans don't consume especially social media content on their traditional desktop machine. They're doing it on phones and tablets. And so for us, it's a tremendous change of philosophy to be a mobile first. That kind of, means now that every page we construct, we have to think about how it looks on a mobile device first and how it looks on a desktop device second. So just changing that mindset has certainly been a challenge, but it's something we're certainly focused on.
Yeah, I think the stats just came out this week that the switch has come over with MLB TV, with more being watched on mobile devices than on big screens and stuff like that. So definitely, everything is moving into a mobile space, and that's where fans are living. So you've got to make sure your content is consumable on those platforms.
It's interesting to me. I've been here for this is my 8th season, 7 years. When I first kind of would go around and would talk to someone, I didn't know about what I did. You're like, oh, that's awesome. Do you do the Seahawks website? And that was always the first thing they went to. And now the first thing they go to is, oh, I have the Seahawks app. I love the Seahawks app. Do you do that? So it's interesting that, and I don't have any metrics, but I'd love to know what percentage of our fans, maybe never actually even come to our website and just get all their content via their mobile app or via social media. So I think, that number would be probably surprisingly large, but it's just interesting in the shift of, thinking and ways people are consuming our content.
I did want to ask you, I know you guys have been sort of posting that way, the recent article in the last couple of days where Facebook has said they're changing the way that EdgeRank is working again and trying to get rid of things like clickbait and, spammy type of headlines. And I don't know, did you catch that article?
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah.
It was, what are your...
Me as a user of Facebook, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's something that we'd seen as a bit of a trend over the last 6 months and sort of took a bit of a, Mark Zuckerberg, when he says, I want Facebook to be the personalized newspaper, they want to be sharing those links. But once they fixed the thumbnail images, so you've got those widescreen images and that looks good on mobile, it was a bit of a no-brainer to go to that space because, people click on the photo, of, Russ Wilson on the front of the SI cover and it sends them straight through to the site. Is that something that you, again, saw as if we're pushing out an article, we want to share it out this way and have been doing that for a little while with good results?
Yeah, I think it's a constant, it's a constant balance because, as you had mentioned, about Instagram earlier, Instagram is really built for the engagement. For the most part, it's very difficult to leave Instagram. I think there's only one spot on the entire app you can actually click a link, and I think that's the website on your bio page. But other than that, there's nowhere else to click on a link. But, for us, it was always interesting, and it was always a balance that, hey, we wanted to have these really engaging Facebook posts. So we want a lot of likes, we want a lot of shares, we want a lot of that stuff. And, we always saw that a photo with a link in the caption always performed better there. But at the end of the day, using the link content always performed better for actually driving people to that piece of content. So, we shifted to moving that link type primarily. I think the two folks who do most of our Facebook posting probably went that way shortly, probably after the Super Bowl, of kind of doing that the primary way. And, we saw it as again, another metric to kind of look at when we're thinking about engagement. It's not only likes plus shares plus comments, it's also the number of link clicks. And so, when we put that piece of it into our little equation, we saw actually that we were getting a much more engaging metric when we did. So we've been using that for a while. I think, there are some cases, where we would still use photos, but, it's an interesting game. Always trying to figure out what works best on Facebook. I think in some ways, we've in the past, we've always had some mistakes, occasionally I feel like, it's just my own philosophy. I think in a lot of ways, the news feed kind of sometimes looks at content that's just more unique in a different way. So, a prime example was we had a post, it was actually back when I was working with the Sounders towards the end of last year that, someone had posted it, but they had just forgotten to attach the image of the post. That post had a much higher reach, much higher engagement, much higher everything than any other post we had. And we couldn't figure it out. And, our kind of pet theory was that, Facebook looked at it and just not many brands are just posting text posts. So I kind of looked at that and kind of, prioritized that. But,
yeah, I saw the old, I think that was a loophole or effectively a bug. Yeah. And I think this latest change is sort of closed that one. But for me, that was a lot of brands sort of chasing that phantom reach metric, and not really, from an I was looking at that from a user point of view as a Facebook user, and if everyone, and I was seeing a lot of brands and teams doing that. If everyone's doing that, it becomes a very vanilla and boring feed. Yep. Whereas, as a fan, you want to see, an article, and you want to see a bone crunching tackle or a player celebrating or whatever. To get them through, because photos have always been more engaging and getting more likes and shares. But the fact now that you can share that link, the ability to reshare that has a bit more virality to your content. But it is something. It is a balance. So because I'm still the same. If you can put up an image that says we're fired up about the game, are you fired up about the game? Then fans will like it and share it, and you've got to play that game. You've got to say, yes, I'm going to let you engage with this post, but this post is a post that I want you to click through and read the article on. But it is a constant, tweaking and watching what works, and playing with it to get the results that you want. Because one of the things you do want from a digital team is you still want people to read your content and see what you've got to say and get to your website.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a constant changing world out there. In a lot of ways, it's similar to folks that are really focused on the search engine marketing world. It's always changing.
And one thing I think that's where a team sort of fits in perfectly is, game day is obviously hyper aware. Everyone is focused in, but what your job is filling that gap between game days with content and keeping the fans engaged. And that's what all these channels do, to be able to, like you were saying before, tell those stories that aren't getting told in the traditional media, whether it be a player's favourite skittles and those kind of things, to keep the fans coming back and giving those different types of content throughout that aren't just strictly the football, the injuries, those kind of things, but to be a bit more of a content organisation overall.
Yeah, I think that's certainly definitely the case. It's game days. People look forward to game days, but it's, how do we keep people connected with our brand throughout the course of the week? And for us, producing the most engaging and compelling content we can is certainly what we strive to do.
But you will not lack for amount of content next Thursday, September 4, when your season kicks off. You got Pharrell Williams performing at CenturyLink before the game, and then you take on the Green Bay Packers. So it should be absolutely a buzz next week.
Yeah, it'll be fun, and don't forget our friends Soundgarden are also playing pregame, so that'll be pretty exciting for our fans here in Seattle to see a local group performing before the game as well.
So there won't be any lack of content both coming from the Seahawks account, and I'm sure the 12s will start firing up their Instagram and Facebook and Twitter accounts, and we'll be seeing a lot of action from Seattle next Thursday.
Absolutely. We're excited for it.
Oh, well, we will keep an eye on everything Seahawks throughout the season, and good luck for the season ahead, and thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks, Sean.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to Kenton Olson from the Seattle Seahawks. You can connect with Kenton and all of the guests that have been on the Sports Geek podcast. The number is now at 76, and thank you very much for everyone of you that has been on the podcast. You simply go to sportsgeekhq.com/SGP guests, and you can connect with them on Twitter or LinkedIn. As I said, they're very smart and savvy sports biz folk, and I recommend connecting with all of them. And one of those who has been on the show and we did catch up with at Seat Conference in Miami was Richard Clark, and talking about the FA Cup final win. Rich is pitching that story and that panel for South by Southwest. So if you could go to the South by Southwest panel picker, simply look up his panel, Storytelling in Soccer, and he's going to talk about what Arsenal did around the FA Cup win. And it's a ripper yarn. Spoke a little bit about it with Rich while I was in Miami. So if you are heading to South by Southwest and want to see a really great talk about what Arsenal did, please vote for Rich's panel. I caught up with Francis this week after nominating him for the Ice Bucket Challenge. He wasn't frosty on my return to the studio, and we had a chat about the changing landscape in media rights and some of the speculation that Google may get involved with the AFL and with other leagues around the world. So this is Francis Leach on ABC Grandstand.
Sean Kellan, the digital sports guru, is in from Sports Geek HQ to talk sport and the digital world on a Saturday morning. G'day, Sean. How you going?
I'm good, thanks, Francis.
You'd be better when you turn your mic on. It's all going well this morning. This has been an interesting week with that. We're years out from the AFL TV rights being up for grabs. But they're turning into like a presidential election race now. 2 or 3 years out already, we're talking about the price of potential purchase for AFL TV rights. The $1 billion deal was done last time.
Yep.
But the landscape's changing dramatically, and there's even a suggestion that non-traditional players could go for the whole lot, could try buying lock, stock and barrel.
Yeah, it's pretty much the way with most leagues. They like this. They always are talking about when their next TV rights come up. So the AFL rights come up again in 2016, and we've seen the CEO Gil McLachlan start the conversation and sort of talk about the different options that the AFL have. And he was talking about splitting up the rights and selling the Friday nights as a 10-year, which is, if a week is a long time in football, 10 years is a exceptionally long time in TV rights and digital rights lands. And there was a really good article on Inside Footy talking about Google potentially becoming a player in the space of digital rights and TV rights. And it's something that I think Google, at least as a global business, is looking at really hard because live sport is one of the only TV properties now that doesn't have the live shifting, pausing and people watch time shifting that's happening with a lot of TV and drama and those kind of things. And Google is seeing this across the landscape. So why would Google want the AFL rights? Well, it could give them a platform to show that they could broadcast a high quality sport like the AFL, but then show their partners that they could monetize it. Now, for people who don't know, Google own YouTube. YouTube is becoming more and more connected to our TVs. More smart TVs can just click a button and you're on a YouTube channel. Devices like Apple TV and Chromecast, a little USB stick you can stick in the side of your computer and you can stream straight from YouTube into your TV. That technology is just coming along in leaps and bounds. So the opportunity is that Google has the cash reserves and things like that, could come and buy the rights and then effectively on sell the pieces that they don't want.
Would we have the capacity to deliver that product satisfactorily to the market? So would our current technology infrastructure be able to deliver high definition television equivalent football via non-traditional means?
Yeah, and that's when it does become an infrastructure issue. It's not Google's issue. It's not the AFL's issue. It's Australia's infrastructure, and this is things like the NBN and the fact that our internet be nothing worse than to roll something out and have 60% of
your game constantly buffering.
Yeah, exactly. That technology is getting better. And I experienced watching the AFL on a computer and stuff, and on an iPad when I was in Europe, and it was near HD quality. But yeah, it does take a bit more size and space and bandwidth to get it to the high def quality that you would like with the AFL, but we don't have high def on AFL at the moment. So that's the current conundrum that only half the games are done in high definition.
Is there any non-traditional player currently with rights to one of the big sports overseas?
Not as yet, but so that's where Google are circling. So a bit of a digital rights history lesson. The NBA before it's now 6 years ago, before their previous deal, they went to Google and said, we've got our digital rights. Would you like to do it? And Google effectively said, no, we don't do that. We don't do sports rights. We're search and YouTube. And it wasn't on their roadmap, which is a real technology term, where we want to head. And so it ended up, the NBA went with Turner Broadcasting, which is traditionally a TV company, and they moved into digital and helped form NBA Digital and became, built out a terrific website, great video archives and those kind of things. Google changed their mind and came back to the NBA a couple of years later and said, oh, we'd really like to do it. And the NBA said, well, we just did a deal. We've got a 4 or 5 year deal with Turner. And that sort of triggered Google to head into the IPL and do the live coverage of the first season of the IPL. So you could watch full IPL games, streaming on YouTube. They had the highlight clips and things like that. And all the studies showed that having it online and having this full streaming games online didn't cannibalize the traditional TV. It actually made people watch it more. And now Google's trying to figure out where they can fit. And the crown jewel in sports TV would be the NFL. So there is chatter that Google would like to get like a Thursday night game and be have that game on the NFL, and that's going to cost them a lot of money.
Massive leap of faith for everyone involved, because nobody wants to be disappeared out of the media landscape, particularly not the franchises that rely on it to generate their revenue. So they've got to trust that the Google product gets to the people they want it to get to. And there'd be a certain demographic within the community that doesn't have or doesn't use that technology. So you're sort of, vaulting yourself into the future a bit, aren't you?
You are, but it's also this. It is just the matter that the media market is fragmenting all over the place, and so there's people watching a lot of games on devices. iPad. Apple's talking about bringing out a maxi iPad. I guess it's going to be a bigger
sports
one.
pad.
Yeah, it's going to be a bigger one, and potentially maybe people are going to start watching it on that kind of device. So it might be a different play, but. Unfortunately, I just don't think Australia has the same population and population density and displacement of fans. A lot of fans are close to their team. They get access to their team and to their content via the TV, or they go to the games. We don't have, like you would in the States, Boston Red Sox fans in LA, and the only way that they can consume that content is via these digital platforms. They're not getting served in traditional TV, and we're very much clustered around our major cities, and not everyone's spread out as much. We are geographically, but not from a town point of view. So I just don't know if the models that are currently rising and working in the US are going to exactly work here. But from the AFL's point of view, if they can get Google as a dance partner at the table that prods traditional media to go, oh, hang on, we better pay that, otherwise Google will come and steal it. That's probably what's at play at the minute.
Absolutely, the bidding price goes up as soon as there's a couple of hands in the air.
Need help with your content? Book in for a content brainstorming session with Sports Geek now. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/work.
What do you guys think? Will Google be a major player for sports rights going forward? Will we see them be a big player in the digital rights space? And will they be bidding against the TV networks for properties like the NFL? Like the AFL, like the NRL. Just makes sense to me that they will start chipping away at that. And as I sort of said in last week's podcast, Steve Sematino's book sort of sums it up, the great fragmentation. It's definitely happening in the world of sports, and Google is just trying to pry away just a few pieces of the puzzle because they know how to monetize those platforms. Just on those content brainstorming sessions, we're having them. It's a bit of a season for that now. We're either doing them at the end of the season as teams finish up and sort of reviewing their content, what they've done, what's worked, what we want to tackle next year, and as well as put in a bit of an off-season content strategy. But then also the teams coming into summer here in Australia or into the winter in the US, looking ahead at the content, what you're planning for the season ahead, around events, around holidays, and around specific platforms and specific fans. So if you want to have a content brainstorming session, please just send me an email, Sean@sportsgeekhq.com. I'd love to work with you. There's the clock wind up. It tells me it's time to wrap up this podcast and get out and let you get on with your day. If you're in the gym, if you're running, please run a few more laps for me. I'm still trying to get back to a little bit of fitness. You can get the links to this episode, and as you can for all episodes, by just simply going to sportsgeekhq.com/58. Thank you to Lance Wicks, who provided this week's sounds of the game, which you can hear just beneath me. Thanks for that, Lance. That was actually from the World Judo Championships in Russia. So would have been a good guess if you had got that one right. Thanks for sending that in. As always, you can send in your audio clips from a game, and with the NFL season kicking off and finals season around the corner with the AFL and NRL. I'd love to get some sounds from around the world, so please send them in. Big thank you to the guys at the Australian International Hockey League who had me as a guest at their grand final, or their championship game for the Good Old Cup, the Melbourne Ice versus the Melbourne Mustangs. And the Mustangs got up for their first win in the Good Old Cup. It was a great game, packed stadium. So thanks again to Robert Bannerman and Miles Harris for inviting me along. Look forward to next season. One more thing. If you haven't got the ebook from Seat, please either sign up for it just by signing up to the newsletter. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Seat ebook. If you're a subscriber and didn't get it, please check your inbox, or simply just email me, Sean at SportsGeekHQ. Happy to share it. Been over 350 downloads so far, and some really good feedback from that. For this closing 2 cents, I'm going to read out a tweet from Kenny Lauer, who tweeted this recently. Staggering stat. He tweeted, by 2020, the average mobile user will download over 1 terabyte annually, which is more than 1,000 feature films. So it just shows you both the power of the mobile and the fact that it's going to become our primary device. And I'll share in the show notes a picture from famed graffiti artist Banksy that pretty much showed the relationship we are currently having with our phone as it was completely intertwined with the hand, and is becoming a device that is increasingly connected. Until next podcast, my name is Sean Callanan. You can find me on Twitter. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're a listener, please, just a simple, quick request that I have is just simply write something in the LinkedIn message if you're doing an intro. LinkedIn does not help itself by clicking the connect button and providing the auto text. But if you simply say, listen to the podcast, I'd love to connect, I have no problems doing so. Until next time, cheers.
Check out which teams work with SportsGeek at sportsgeekhq.com/clients. Find all SportsGeek podcasts at sportsgeekhq.com/SGP. Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. Thanks for listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.